a teacher in the state of Florida, I am now obligated to teach you about the benefits of American slavery, particularly the benefits that it had for the slaves themselves. Wait a minute, the benefits of American slavery for the slaves themselves? What the fuck? The only people who benefited from slavery was the greedy-ass plantation owners and the people who bought their products. But there definitely weren't any benefits in it for the slaves themselves. Oh, I beg to differ. There were some benefits, and the state of Florida is forcing me to teach you those benefits. For example, the slaves had free room and board. They didn't have to pay rent. That was a pretty good deal. They got free food. That was definitely a perk. And they got free clothing. The slave owners provided the slaves with their uniform. Now, how many of you have worked a job where you had to pay for your own uniform? Slaves didn't have to worry about that. Benefits. Okay, so what about the fact that they weren't free and couldn't leave the plantation and were beaten mercilessly when they didn't work hard enough? And since they worked for free, everything you just said could just be seen as compensation for their labor. And all those things were horrible. Their housing was substandard, full of rats and shit. They lived next to livestock. Their clothes were raggedy, and the food wasn't fit for human consumption. Look, you make some valid points, but at the end of the day, one could still look at those things as benefits. Okay, so if there were so many benefits, would you do it? Would you willingly be a slave? Oh, God, no, of course not. Why the hell would anybody willingly be a slave? So I guess the drawbacks outweighed the benefits. Look, the state of Florida just wants me to teach you that sometimes there are benefits to negative things. For example, let's look at the benefits of the John F. Kennedy assassination. If John F. Kennedy hadn't been assassinated, we wouldn't have spent as much time in the Vietnam War. And then defense contractors wouldn't have made as much money through the military-industrial complex. I mean, somebody would have lost out. What the fuck? Yo, whose mans is this? Now let's take a look at the benefits of the Challenger disaster. Remember when that space shuttle exploded in 1986? If that hadn't happened, we wouldn't know, hey, you probably shouldn't launch a space shuttle when it's cold outside. That was a learning experience. See? Benefits. That was a national tragedy. The fuck is wrong with this dude? There were even benefits to things like 9/11. Think about it. Do you like One World Trade, that shiny building in Lower Manhattan? It wouldn't be there right now if it weren't for 9/11. 9/11 cleared space for new infrastructure. Yo, this is sickening. I don't think I can take too much more of this class. And now, Ron DeSantis and the state of Florida would like me to teach you the benefits of Nazi Germany. Nope, we out. They got us fucked up.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Thank you for joining me here for Conversations with Taz for Think About It Thursday. Quick little nugget before we jump into it. If you follow me on TikTok and you like the Adventures with Taz series, do realize that it will be posted every day between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, basically right before we start over here, so I can kind of unjumble my mind and you can find out how I found the glasses. Yeah, but we'll just leave it at that. Remember last night when I kind of hinted, but I was kind of overt with it, that the GOP is kind of unraveling themselves and the Macedonians, the MAGA clan, are finally having to come to terms with the truth? Oh, is the shit rolling downhill? Now, yes, I'm sure you've heard about the breaking news. There is now a third person under the indictment in Florida for the Mar-a-Lago case regarding Trump and the documents. And there's been another charge added. I love this for him. It's like a second birthday. But let's get into Rudy Giuliani. You know, his former right-hand man, the OG attorney that had to shut up, sit down, and back down. You know how everybody thought that Rudy was so great and so wonderful and so upstanding due to 9/11. And I kept telling people that he didn't know shit. He just happened to be the mayor at that time. And I think they would have put any of the mayors at that time on a pedestal. Yeah, take a look at his latest. These are my confessions.
Is Rudy Giuliani a liar? Well, yes, according to Rudy Giuliani. Let's take a look. You may recall that he had some absolutely horrible things to say about Ruby Friedman and Shay Moss. According to Rudy, they brought in suitcases of fake ballots into Georgia and basically screwed up the entire election in favor of Joe Biden. Freeman and Moss have suffered years of harassment, and they ultimately sued Giuliani for defamation. Now, in a stipulation, Giuliani said that he did in fact make the statements that plaintiffs alleged he made, and they carry meaning that is defamatory per se. The per se part just means, yeah, they're defamatory. Were the statements true? Nope. The actionable, factual statements were false. And there is Giuliani's signature. So, he agrees that he lied, but he's saying he had a First Amendment right to lie and defame them. I don't think that's going to work very well for him.
Now, some people may be wondering, Taz, why would you share that? What does that have to do with the bigger picture of everything? You have to realize Giuliani was part of that initial in the public legal, see, this person did this and this is where the proof is. Once he has admitted and signed his name on the dotted line saying that he lied, there's no defense. There's no defense for anyone else involved in the big lie that is the stolen election. Yes, everybody else, multiple other people have said, yes, Trump knew, all this other stuff. This is equivalent to your bestest friend and you going into a store, getting accused of shoplifting, and your friend goes, no, we didn't. They just profiled us. And then finally opens up her purse and goes, yeah, we lied. And I made up this story to cover for my friend. Here's everything back. I said this the other day to someone during a conversation. We know that Trump decided to run for president again because he wanted to have presidential immunity. And he really believes that he can pardon himself, which I will continue to go through the Constitution. I haven't seen anywhere in the Constitution where it says he can do it, but I haven't seen where it has explicitly said he cannot do it. And with the current SCOTUS that we have, they would probably let him do it. But here's the thing. He should have taken plea deals. He should have taken plea deals. He should have shut up and not talked about any of this at a rally, on the campaign. No, nothing. He should not have allowed the focus for his constituency, his fan base, his Magadonians to be focused on his court cases, because we know he goes after people who do not have the frontal lobe capability to understand, let alone discern what's going on. And a lot of them, like a few weeks back when we talked about the grandma with cancer who went to prison and got out, they're becoming disillusioned because he's taken this grift too far. If you've ever seen the show Leverage, there's a character on there that is a professional grifter. She always says, don't take the grift too far. That's when you lose them. He's taking it too far. And before you go, Taz, you're reaching. I hope you stretched. Got a clip from another podcast, a fervently right-wing podcast that was really selling it home to their viewers about the big steal. Look what they have to say now.
I want to see something funny. Blaze TV host Steve Deace, D-E-A-C-E, is a little bit mad. Blaze TV being Glenn Beck's little propaganda. Check this out.
For these people, we are offering them more accommodation, more chances than we'd offer our own family members, for goodness sakes. And for what? To have Rudy Giuliani go down to Georgia and admit that he lied? Have Jason Miller tell the January 6th commission, yeah, we all knew it was BS. What is this? Some of you don't like it when I use the cult word, but when you like being treated like a schmuck and ask for more, that is a cult. I'm the mark. I'm the sucker. I want to be such. And I resent the person who tries to get me out of that. Those are marks of groupthink, frankly. How many people in this audience sent money to stop the steal 3 years ago? How many shows did I waste your time talking about this 3 years ago? How many? I still have not recovered between the election fraud and COVID. I probably have the smallest Facebook following of any major show in this entire industry. I will routinely post things on Facebook at like 2 or 3 comments. It's like Facebook is like, we won't ban you because then you'll whine about it and generate a bunch of publicity. So we'll just make it that no one sees your material at all. Why? Because I went to the math, which is on COVID and the election fraud issue. Only to have Reba Giuliani say, yeah, I was lying. And Jason Miller say, oh, he knows all this. All the best people, Steve. Email me.
Is this the beginning of self-awareness? I love this for them.
He knows that his viewers spent money. He knows that he spewed not only election disinformation now, but now he's questioning the information he put out regarding COVID. Let's deal with the COVID part first. This is what still baffles me to this day. All of the COVID deniers, the vaccine deniers, the anti-vaxxers who have sat back and watched friends, family, their spouses, their children die of COVID, themselves be hospitalized for months with COVID, that still lie about it. That's some evil shit. That is some evil shit to try just so you can say that you got one up on a whole nother political party. Are we not all in the same pot, sitting on the same stove? But then when it comes to Trump, because whether I talk to someone who supports Trump, whether they consider themselves MAGA or not, whether it's online or in real life, I don't know if they're lying or if they're going to great lengths to hide themselves from the truth. Because when you bring up, he said this, like it's been all over everything. Oh, I didn't see that. I don't know anything about it. But when they want a counter argument, they're top-notch researchers. Because if I talk about my experience as a Black queer woman living in the United States, they can look up every statistic about being queer in another country. They can tell me about the mythical social media bullshit that is, the first slave owner in the United States was Black. How? Ugh, but that's a conversation for a whole nother day. So it's like, and some things are so everywhere that it's like, are you burying your head in the sand every time you leave the house? Do you just have your TV program for one thing? Like when you turn it on, you get nothing else. It just automatically goes ding, right. No commercials, no ads for anything else. When you're at work, no one speaks of anything. Like when you go in the break room, if you have a TV, like it's just automatically tuned in to leave you in the dark. But just like the sycophants, the GOP itself is just as delusional and brain dead. Because, they waged this war on Bud Light. I want to play this video, and on the back end, we're going to discuss that. And I want to remind y'all of a little nugget on the back end.
Okay, stick with me. The biggest news story and what every Democrat should be talking about is not the indictments. It's not the Supreme Court and the pipeline. It is the fact that Republicans and the right-wing media machine are celebrating that Bud Light's stock tanked so much they had to lay off 100 people. Stop for a minute. The right-wing media machine is praising this. Look, we'll go broke. Look what we did. 100 people lost their job. If we use the current statistics with the 2020 election, roughly 42 to 45 of them are Trump supporters. If you are a Republican, I want you to look at this situation objectively. None of the right-wing media machine knows you exist. Your health, your well-being doesn't matter to them. Don't get me started on the Trump rallies or the anti-masks in school. I'm not even talking about that. We can discuss that the church who's writing the bills that Republicans that you're voting for are putting into place will put your daughter and your daughters at risk. But I want you to think about this one thing. Nobody in the Democratic Party or the woke agenda side called for a boycott. We did not. We couldn't figure out how the fuck you were mad about a picture with a beverage company. But your leaders on the right told you to be mad at it. It said it was going to affect your kids. I don't know how. How? 46 of you have lost your job. 46 of you may lose your house in foreclosure if you can't find another one. And that foreclosure will be easier because Republicans passed bills to allow banks to do that. You're going to qualify for SNAP benefits, but they're going to be less because Republicans took that away from you. Now, if you can afford Cobra, I hope you can, but that's fucking expensive. So that means you're going to have to use the Affordable Care Act in the open market. What happens if you can't find a job fast enough? A Republican-appointed federal judge in Texas has deemed that the Affordable Care Act does not have to cover preventatives. Now you take the risk that your wife has breast cancer and she's not being checked for it, or you have colon cancer, or what if one of your kids is sick? And none of this had to do with Democrats. It didn't have to do with the gay community. It had to do with the people that you were in the mob with, showing you they don't care about your well-being. That is called dominionism. Why do you think it was so easy for Cawthorn to be thrown under the bus? Ask yourself right now, if you came out and said that boycott cost me my job, how do you think that they would react? Seriously, how do you think they would react? These two teachers who were teaching at a private Christian school went to a drag show and posted a picture and lost her job. 2 of them. What you are seeing right now and what you are feeling the effect of is red states usurping your religion, telling you what to think, distracting you on values and not actual issues, and while they did that, they solidified power. This is going to start happening more, and more of you Republicans are going to start feeling the aftermath. But you're not going to be able to say anything. You won't be able to speak out. We'll send your kids to detention centers inside of schools, where they will reprogram them, just like West Virginia was doing. We're in a bad situation.
Now, remember when I told you that hate, white supremacy, racism affects everybody? No one is safe from it. You want to know who has been historically one of the largest donors to the GOP? Anheuser-Busch, who owns Bud Light. Keep in mind, this is the same party who was getting themselves vaccinated in droves that told people they don't need to. They killed off a good chunk of their voting base, and now they're scrambling, but they're rejoicing in their voter base losing their jobs. This is after they were trying to cut benefits that the vast majority of their voter base relies on to survive. And you know, the military sycophants, the ultimate bootlickers in the military or married to the military because they believe that that's a badge of honor. They done made it if they snatched them up a military wife or a military husband. And no, I'm not saying anything about anyone who has joined the military, but y'all know the people that I'm talking about. That has been their whole life's goal, to either be in the military or be married to someone in the military, to have that military adjacency. In Tuberville, and the bobbleheads in his party have promotions and more in limbo. Everything that is needed for their voter base to survive, they're not doing. But they want to tell you socialism is wrong. People caring about you is wrong. People caring about other people is wrong. Do you get their messaging now? They want to not give a shit about anybody right in your face in 4K, and they want you to back it. This is why they're saying socialism bad, because they are driving you to the point where you're going to have to crowdsource. And what is crowdsourcing? Socialism. They don't care. And they're telling you the other party is bad. You got to own the libtards because they care. Why do you think there are so many conservative GOP members that are so proud of working 100 hours a week? And as far as what they're going to do to your children, it's not off in the future. It's today.
We all knew the push against books, the push against librarians was going to end somewhere bad, and it has. Houston Independent School District will eliminate librarians and convert libraries into disciplinary centers. Former library spaces at some schools will be converted into rooms where students who misbehave will be relocated to watch lessons virtually, work alone, or in groups with differentiated lessons. Books will remain on shelves, and students will still be able to borrow books on an honor code system. This is sending the wrong message, friends, associating books with misbehavior. All of this is coming under a new superintendent. There's a lot of reporting saying that this superintendent was forced out at Dallas Independent School District. No matter your political stripe, most people agree that public schools and public school students should have access to a library. This is really bad.
The same people that will support this are the same people that will criticize historic book bannings and book burnings. So on a honor system, you can still check out books, but who's going to determine the honor code that you have to adhere to? And what exactly is going to be the threshold for what's considered for that child to be sent there? Because we know Black and brown children are demonized far quicker and far more harshly in schools right now. So what is he going to round up all the girls for dress code violations because they're showing a little bit too much shoulder, a little too much arm? And then you're going to get them over there and convince them to be human incubators for the pedophiles that are searching for child brides? Because let's not forget the other legislation that they're pushing on top of this. Lowering the age of consent. Lowering the age to require parental consent to marry. But even with lowering the age for parental consent, if you're trapped in a child bride marriage, CPS can't help you because you're married. But you also can't do other things because you're not 18 yet. Not without the consent of your husband. And how willing do you think he's going to be to consent to these things? And if you've paid attention and noticed, there are a lot of coaches, teachers, tutors, everything that are being arrested and rounded up that we know about for grooming or assaulting children now. And with this great replacement theory running around, and then wanting white voters that are undereducated, it's going to get worse because they're not thinking past right now in their election cycles and what it's going to take to keep them in power. But in 15 to 20 years, who's going to be your nurse? Who's going to be your doctor? Who's going to be in charge of the country at that point? Because we already have low IQ points on Capitol Hill now. We joke about living through the movie Idiocracy now. We're going to have a combination of Mad Max and Idiocracy in about 20 years if this is not stopped. It's time to combat Moms for Liberty with parents for the future. And whether you live in Tennessee or not, take a good hard look at what's going on in Tennessee, my apologies, because this may be your neck of the woods. And once again, in 10, 15, 20 years, who's going to have the skill set and the knowledge to do certain things we need to have done? Take a look.
Regardless of political affiliation, like, you need to ask yourself the simple question: how much government interference do you want in your own life from American politicians? The answer is probably zero. Okay, so you need to pay attention to what is going on in Tennessee right now. Tennessee has one of the strictest abortion bans, and that's not what this video is about, but I have to preface, the new law, okay, which I think passed in April, has no exceptions for fetal anomalies. I've seen things such as no skull, no kidneys, obviously it will not survive, and the mother is still forced to carry that dead fetus to term. No exceptions for victims of this or this. Within the bill, there is no exception for giving an abortion to save a mother's life, but there is affirmative defense, which means that the physician has to prove through all of the medical records that they gave the abortion to save the mother's life. And if they can't, or if they do it for any one of these reasons, that physician can get a Class C felony. So a lot of them are unwilling to do the abortion to save the woman's life without the chance that they can prove it and or any of these reasons. So what's happening? Since the passage, every freestanding abortion clinic in Tennessee has closed or ceased providing abortion services. In 2 instances, Tennessee clinic operators moved their abortion operations across state lines. Doctor residency programs stopped offering abortion training. Doctors have spoken out about the chilling effect of the law on providing patient care, including routine miscarriage treatment and options for patients carrying pregnancies with fetal anomalies. Some doctors opted to leave Tennessee. So because of all of this, patients with this, or patients who are losing their lives and physicians who can't be found to help them, they are leaving. They're going to other states. So what are Republicans in Tennessee proposing? Let's call him out first, shall we? Republican Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetta. This is the face of a man who doesn't think that you can make your own decisions about your own body and your own life, or the body and life of your underage daughter. This is the face of a man who wants to make those decisions for you. So let's take a look at what he wants. He and 18 other Republicans want access to your out-of-state medical records. So in a dire situation, if you're a woman and you need an abortion to save your life and you cannot find a physician willing to do it, or there's a fetal anomaly and you don't feel like carrying a dead fetus to term, or any of the other exceptions for you or possibly your underage daughter, and in that dire situation, you drive across state lines to go find the healthcare that you know is best for you or your daughter, well, now they have access to your medical records and you broke that law in the state that you live in. Transgender adults who have gender-affirming care, who have fully transitioned as adults, gender-affirming care is now illegal in Tennessee. So in a dire situation, when they drive across state lines to get the hormones to keep them the man that they've become, well, now they have access to those medical records, and they broke the law in the state that they live in. It is okay as a Republican to admit that the Republicans are going too far. They are going after complete control. I am not going to run out of content. This is just going to get worse and worse and worse, and it will be complete control. Time to pay attention.
Now, if you notice, they're not even teaching doctors in the state of Tennessee about abortion care at all. Now, real quick, we do have to backtrack. That's my apologies. In one of the videos, it was inferred about a teacher in Texas who was fired. Coming from the Business Insider, a teacher said she was fired from a Texas school after 20 years and treated like a criminal for attending a drag show. The key points: a Texas teacher said the Christian school where she worked fired her after she went to a drag show. Christy Maris said news of her termination spread like wildfire before she knew about it. Maris's dismissal followed a wave of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation across the United States. This might be unpopular, but it's going to be honest. I don't give a shit about that particular woman. You're a white woman working at a Christian school. You see the legislation that's going on, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that she's also Republican. You went to a drag show. You posted pictures about it. There have been full-on right-wing neo-Nazi protests at drag queen brunch hours, drag queen story hours. And you thought that the powers that be at your Christian school were just going to be like, oh, that's so cute. You're off the clock. No matter, public school teachers are fighting for their lives, for parents to leave them alone and realize that their job is not 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that they have a life outside of it. And they're trying to get parents to stop searching for them on social media and stop going to the schools saying that everything about their life outside of school is inappropriate, which makes them inappropriate to teach in the classroom. And you thought at a parochial school in Texas, this boils my blood as much as American artists going to other countries and breaking their laws because, like, we're going to show a sign of solidarity, but you're not going to do it in the United States, but you want us to spend millions of dollars to free your ass because you got arrested over there for breaking the law knowingly. Doing a stunt to get into the headlines helps no one. It's performative as fuck. And if it costs you everything, it costs you everything. I am all for skating in the gray areas of life in order to get change done. I am all for bucking the system, but don't play victim to get a headline. And it truly, truly pisses me off as a woman of color in the United States, where I'm legitimately treated like shit, and then told that I'm playing victim. But you get a woman who chose to go to a drag show knowing what stipulations were going to come. And I was, oh, put me in the news, of course. And I knew there was going to be an increase when the racist bitch who called the cops at that Starbucks on those two black men was able to sue and get millions of dollars because I can't get a job anymore because people think I'm racist. Now you're going to get an influx of dumb twat waffle default damsel in distresses doing this shit, setting themselves up to be a victim to get a payout. And it was doubled down on when the Supreme Court allowed a lie to become law of the land. But we're equal, right? We're equal. If I go into a store and go into my purse while at the store, I'm getting accosted. But she can do all of this and it's front page news. Now, anybody who's followed me for a while, anybody who knows me, y'all know I love me some Reba McEntire, okay? And there is a long-standing joke that Reba McEntire is the Mary J. Blige for white people. They have similar backgrounds, similar heartaches, they always have very, very similar hairstyles at the same time. Sorry, I just thought about that. But Miss Reba, Miss McEntire, your take on the Jason Aldean situation, that was a bad take. You should have sat this one out. Don't just take my word for it. What's the number one rule about here? Research over me search.
And if there's a problem, let's talk about it. Let's cancel culture stuff. You can't learn from just saying, windows up. That's all we're going to talk about. I'm right, you're wrong. That's it. End of discussion. No, we don't learn anything that way. Give the person the benefit of the doubt and let's discuss it.
There was no give them the benefit of the doubt and let's discuss it. They need to learn when it came to the Trump's January 6th self-coup. There was no Give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's teach them. When we had to take to the streets again to protest. There is no giving the benefit of the doubt for blatant racism. There is no let's sit down and teach them when Jason Aldean is currently on a 41 city tour. And as he opens every show, he's bringing up cancel culture because he is now playing the white man oppression victim. Now, I did notice that on Reba's of all of her official social media, that video does not exist. Excuse me. A mutual had duetted it on TikTok, and I was trying hard to find the original because I didn't really want to associate their face with it. I didn't want people to think that they were, co-signing that. But sometimes it's best just to shut the fuck up. Sometimes it's best just to shut the fuck up. Sometimes it's also best to journal and read over what you journaled and think, should I let that come out of my mouth, and why do I feel this way? No, Jason doesn't want to learn shit. And it was 2022. His wife did an interview with Fox News why they wanted to whatever. And she was talking about her days in modeling. And she said out of her own mouth, and I can confirm this, whether it's a photo shoot or video shoot, everything is very, very intentional. It is planned out. Everyone is in the loop. The amount of hands that has to go through. So all of this, I didn't know. I didn't have any idea. We already know he did the dirty delete with 2 scenes out of the music video. I already told y'all, and you can check for yourself. He's like, the cancel culture's coming after me. He knew. He knew what, oh my goodness, I sound like Chelsea Hart, but I digress. What the concept of the video was going to be. And that video was made intentionally because they needed this song to skyrocket. And he knew who he had to placate to. And stop allowing people to make you believe that they don't understand what a dog whistle is. And I'm going to show you why.
Hey all, I know it's been a while. Let's talk about the Jason Aldean song. Now, there's a lot of talk on this app about whether or not it is a racist dog whistle, and a lot of good creators have already pointed out how absolutely it is, and they've shown all the imagery to show that it is. So that's not what I'm going to talk about. Instead, I want to talk about the theoretical underpinnings of why it's a dog whistle and why we are recognizing it. So let's begin with what a dog whistle is from the person who really created it.
By 1968, you can't say that hurts your backfire, so you say stuff like forced busing, states' rights, and all that stuff. And you're getting so abstract now that you're talking about cutting taxes, and all of these things you're talking about are totally economic things, and the byproduct of them is blacks get hurt worse than whites.
Now, for those that don't know, that was Lee Atwater, the guy that was circled in red. And Lee Atwater is one of the architects of the Southern Strategy, and he is the former campaign strategist for Ronald Reagan. The same Ronald Reagan who invented the term welfare queen at Atwater's behest to paint black people as illegally using welfare based off of a white woman's actions. You heard that correctly. The original welfare queen, Linda Taylor, was a white woman who was pretending to be a black woman, and Reagan knew it and still plastered it across the airs as if it was a black woman who was living that lifestyle. In that speech by Atwater, he is saying that you can't be explicitly racist anymore, that if you want to cause harm to people of color, you have to use coded language that appears to be economic in nature or appear to be race neutral. It has to be colorblind. This is why Aldean's song doesn't specifically call out any specific race. It's instead relying on the listener to add in whatever context and nuance they want to add. because they know who he's talking about. That's why he uses imagery behind him in the video of places where lynchings happened and painting the Black Lives Matter protesters as being problematic and as being criminal. It's all racist dog whistles. It's the if you know kind of thing. This is all part of an idea called symbolic racism. So that concept means that white Americans have realized that they can't be explicitly racist anymore because there's pushback and there is consequences for that explicitly racist action. So racism today doesn't manifest as white hoods and racial slurs in the same way that it used to. That's a very small amount of what racism is today. Instead, racism is presented in a more institutional manner. It's more symbolic and coded and implicit. And I talked about this in my newest paper. So while Aldine is not a politician, he is a political figure. So as politicians use fearful imagery to racialize discourse related to immigration, crime, and political unrest, white Americans seek to protect their interests through gun ownership. And isn't that the crux of what his song is saying? Protect white interests through violence? Why else would he say Black Lives Matter is a problem? And that's why it's a dog whistle.
Excuse me. These are the same people who have called us moon crickets, basketball Americans, decided to code fuck Joe Biden with let's go Brandon. And you think they don't understand dog whistles? Their latest dog whistle is only dogs can hear dog whistles. And only doors should have wreaths, but there's your family tree. Now moving on to everybody that's like, you should show more compassion to Mitch McConnell. I know the GOP has a short memory, but do y'all remember all of the distasteful jokes and conspiracy theories they had out when Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was attacked within their home and had to be hospitalized and undergo emergency surgery? Does anybody else remember the distasteful jokes that they still have regarding George Floyd? Does anybody remember the distasteful jokes they still have regarding Michelle Obama? But you want to know who else got jokes? Mitch, regarding himself.
Well, the president called to check on me. I told him I got sandbagged.
Oh, nice. How are you feeling now, sir? How are you feeling now?
I'm fine.
Have you seen a doctor? Are you going to see
Any idea what happened?
Huh?
Any idea what happened?
I'm fine. That's the
Dehydrated?
important part. Gotta watch those sandbags.
Biden wasn't too senile to call him. Now we do have some January 6th news.
This man above me is Chad Barrett Jones. He's seen right there breaking the glass on January 6th. He was in the lobby with Ashley Babbitt and was part of the group that smashed the window for her to crawl through. He was just found guilty on all 5 felony charges and will be sentenced soon. He's facing up to 20 years. His family turned him in.
So please stop with the Antifa BLM crap. His family knew that he was wrong. But for everybody screaming for justice for Ashley Babbitt, there you go. There you have it. There you have it. He was part of the people who set her up to get banged in the head. There's your justice. She wasn't a martyr. She was an idiot. And even if she would have lived, she would have been clink too. Let's take a look at this new joke of a curriculum.
I'm about to show you here is a sampling of the supplemental educational materials that were just approved by Florida's Department of Education for showing in public schools, kindergarten through 12th grade.
America is more than just a place on a map. It's an ideal and a set of values stemming
stereotypes exist because they reflect the way that men and women are naturally different.
Eventually, all socialist countries face serious scarcity of basic needs.
Change, however, came to India when the British Empire took control. Along with advancements in transportation, agriculture, and government, the British spread the influence of Christianity and Western values throughout India. Yes, the famously benevolent English occupation of India. These videos are part of a program called PragerU Kids. It is overtly right-wing, and it answers a question that I have had for a while. Ever since Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed the state's so-called Stop Woke Act, which restricted teaching anything too woke in Florida schools, I have wondered what that will actually mean for lesson plans and class time. Well, last week we got our first glimpse of that with Florida's new history standards that require students to be taught that Black Americans benefited from slavery. And now we have another glimpse, PragerU Kids. The right-wing nonprofit, Prager University, which is, by the way, not an actual accredited academic institution, it describes its mission as fighting back against the left-wing propaganda pushed on children in schools. And that translates to kids magazines that teach about American heroes like Charles Schwab, J.P. Morgan, and Ayn Rand. Or ones that push clean coal and describe climate change as an unproven and debated theory. It also means videos about why your kids should back the blue and reject Black Lives Matter. And it also has crafting lessons, like building a model version of Israel's Iron Dome, a classic children's activity right up there with Cat's Cradle. There is also lots and lots of overtly religious, quote, Judeo-Christian content. And all of that is now approved for any Florida teacher who wants to use it as supplemental content in his or her classroom from kindergarten through 12th grade. According to PragerU's website, more states are coming soon. And ladies, if that upsets you, maybe take a note from PragerU's kids video on how to be feminine and, quote, just try smiling.
Mark my words, Moms for Liberty will be pushing this. Pay attention to what's going on in your school districts, or else some shit like this might slip in. Just smile.
Now, years ago, when PragerU profiles started popping up on Facebook, and they were using the faces of marginalized people and heavily internalized racist, revisionist content to get through to people, I said, this is going to be a bigger problem. I was told that I was reaching. When different employees of PragerU were popping up on TikTok, and sometimes their name was PragerU, sometimes it was a combination of Prager and their first name or whatever, or they would always mention PragerU. It was always highly divisive, propagandized bullshit. And I kept saying, yeah, they're riling the masses here. And people were like, oh, just ignore them, ignore them. And I said, nope. They're pushing too hard for such a heavy online presence. And this is the end game. Having a heavy online presence, we've seen it work for good, but we have to pay attention to when it works for bad. Now, we're well aware of the incel harvesting, what the Andrew Tates and all the red pills and all the incels, what they do to get people to come on over to their side and embrace their toxic masculinity. What a lot of people are missing, and this is why I get irritated when people say, oh, don't put any energy into that. Don't waste your time with them. This is what happens when you don't dispel it, and enough people are like, oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh yeah, that's what I learned. Oh, see, that's what I was thinking. I knew that was the right history, and no one's giving the actual history. Online propaganda now becomes a curriculum for your child's classroom. So what they're learning in the classroom, because trust and believe, they're going to be given, oh, are you on social media? Oh, you should follow this, is going to be confirmed for them in what their minds believe is the real world. And you know how it felt to be in school. You learn something and then you see it out in the world. And you're like, oh, that is right. The teacher was right. And it builds excitement and it causes you to want to learn more and more and more. We're going back to the 50s. We are going back to the 50s, and it's going to be worse now than it was in the 50s. And since they kept bringing up Christianity, here's a question. So many people keep posing it. Do we actually need Christianity?
Christianity never existed.
Well, that would have been horrible for humanity, given that Christianity is responsible for so much of our moral progress, as well as increasing education and literacy rates, spreading democratic values, and was crucial for ending slavery.
This cherry-picked revisionist history is intolerably naive. Christians ended slavery. Ignore the fact that they practiced it for hundreds of years and other Christians killed hundreds of thousands of people to preserve it. Christianity is responsible for the expansion of human rights. Ignore the fact that hundreds of millions of people have died as a result of genocides and cultural extinctions in the New World, the countless wars fought in the name of Christianity, the slavery once again, and all that. Inspiring philosophy and many others have constructed an alternative reality where the Confederates were not Bible-thumping Christians. The fact that abolitionists and people who were pro-slavery were both Christians means that something entirely different than Christianity had anything to do with one belief or the other. Abolitionists rationalized their position based on Christianity, and so did those who were pro-slavery.
Scientific discovery would have happened much faster with the Enlightenment period starting in the 12th century.
This is a modern myth invented in the 19th century and perpetrated by people who don't know history. Science, which was called natural philosophy, advanced throughout Christian Europe in the medieval period. In fact, historians today note that Christianity was very important for the development of science. James Hannam said, "Christian theology turned out to be uniquely suited to encouraging the study of the natural world."
Christianity spread science and literature. Ignore the fact that anti-scientific Christian dogmas were punishable by death for hundreds of years and still are in parts of the world. The fact that they banned books. The first person who attempted to translate the Bible into English was executed by the church, and all that. Claiming that Christianity had anything to do with science is a post hoc rationalization. Now I get it. Newton proclaimed he did his work for the glory of God, but that also proves nothing. And I get it. A lot of early science was done by Christians, but that proves Christianity is responsible as much as being a straight white European male, which they also were, was responsible. If you want to prove it, you ideally need two continents or two Earths where Christians in one place and non-Christians in another place who had no outside interactions with anybody else did what they did and then see what happens. Now, the real world has too many moving parts to definitively say X had precisely this much to do with science, but there's some compelling evidence. Despite being outnumbered 100 to 1, Jewish people have accomplished as much to the progress of science as Christians have. If you care at all about the progress of science, and you think religion has anything to do with it, then you should be advocating for as many Christians to become Jewish as possible. Also, would science in Christian Europe have progressed at the rate it did if not for trade with Muslim North Africa and the equally unchristian Asia? There's not a chance. Information, capital, and perspectives are traded in a global network like that. Because Christian Europe was very much not isolationist, we have no idea what influence those other ideas and goods and inventions from around the world had on the progress of science. But to say that it wasn't significant, I think is really naive. Then there's also the terribly inconvenient fact that religious dogma has historically been and continues to be the greatest obstacle to science and human progress in general. The course of history is complex, but it has a general pattern. We have inexorably marched towards a state of more wealth, better health, longer lives, less ignorance, more rights, more autonomy, and less autocracy. That has coincided directly with a world and worldviews that have become more and more secular.
And let us not forget that the only science that Christianity could ever take credit for would be the pseudoscience that they utilized and the bastardized version of the Bible that's predominantly used within the United States that they use to continuously keep a hold on chattel slavery and the divisiveness between the umbrella of denominations underneath Protestantism and the division between Catholicism and Protestantism. Way to keep your light trimmed and burning and in constant preparation for the return of the bridegroom. Now, I know we often talk about performative allyship, and I know that there are some glaring examples of it, but I found an example that far too many people are falling for, and I'm going to show you, and then we're going to break it down on the other side.
This is listening to racism, a practice where I notice my racist and white supremacist thoughts and actions so that I can stop them. I was coming back from grocery shopping today when I saw a couple of women get out of a old-looking car. The women looked like they were Latina, and my first thought was, oh, they're going to clean my neighbor's house. I've recently learned that this racist conditioning is something that has been in my family more prevalently than I thought. I learned that my uncle, who recently passed away, was the creator of the Frito Bandito. And you can Google that and look it up. And it's a pretty horrific stereotype of someone from Mexico with a very long pointy mustache and stubble and a gold tooth, which at the time, I think Mexican Anti-Defamation Organization said, hey, you need to not use that character. So the ad agency and the brand got rid of the gold tooth and the stubble. I'm losing ideas about what to say about this. As far as how to stop this racism, how to stop it in my head. And it keeps coming. And the guidance that I'm getting is to keep talking about it. So I'm going to keep talking about it. I may end up saying the same things over and over again. And I guess that's just the way it is for now. My uncle, may he rest in peace, was a racist, an active racist, a Trump voter, and I'm glad that he's at peace now, because I know that there is no peace for people who live with that much hatred. Thanks for listening.
You see the look on my face, right? And y'all know, I don't just take things at face value. And let's look at the creator of the Frito Bandito, okay? It's created by Frederick Bean, Tex Avery, February 26, 1908 to August 26, 1980. How was he a Trump voter? And you see how she said she recently learned that racism was so prevalent in her family. She has quite a few videos up. And her hashtag is that she's listening to racism, not combating it, not deconstructing from it, just listening to it. She didn't say how she fixed the thought that she had. She doesn't say how she's taking action to educate others or stepping up when she witnesses racism. She is using social media as a pseudo journal for clout. Sweetheart, this isn't Doogie Howser. And if y'all remember Doogie Howser, that was the start of online journals. But the Frito Bandito was the cartoon mascot for Frito's corn chips from 1967 to 1971. The Bandito was created by the Foot, Cone, and Belding Agency and animated by Tex Avery. The character was voiced by Mel Blanc, who used an exaggerated Mexican accent, not unlike another character of his, Speedy Gonzalez. The Frito Bambitos spoke broken English and robbed people of their Fritos corn chips, a reference to the Mexican bandit stereotype in Western movies. Pressure from the National Mexican American Anti-Defamation Committee and others prompted an update to the character. His gold tooth and stubble were eliminated and his hair combed. The character was retired in 1971. He was replaced by Mucha Bunch, a group of cowboys, and W.C. Fritos, a character modeled after comedian W.C. Fields. So, not only is she performative with her pseudo activism, she's a damn liar. Now, I know that there was a big surgence and it was like a big trend for cryogenetic freezing. And people thought that, you know what, one day in the future, they'll unfreeze me. Baby, they cut your head off and keep it in a certain different place from your body. And that will not automatically heal your body that's been ravaged by disease, even if we found a cure for a disease. Y'all all too far gone and you're already dead. So how was he a Trump supporter? But there are people in her comment section just eating it up. This is why I say I don't care if it's me or somebody else. Fact check. Now you understand why I bring people the article straight to their face. I read from the book straight to your face and then give commentary on top of it. But she's been on this journey for a while, but she's just now realizing what's going on in her own family. That's overt. She painted this whole picture that she had an uncle that was so racist. Nobody else in the family. She said the family, but one uncle, but never said what she did about her thoughts. Never said if she said anything to those women. Never said how she's deconstructing. But there's so many people, thank you for this, thank you. Let's get through this segment regarding country music, I'll say posers.
So in the wake of that stupid fucking Jason Aldean song, which I promise I'm done talking about, there is another phenomenon that I've noticed over the course of my life that I want to shed a little bit of light on. Now, yeah, I live in New England these days, but I spent the first 2 decades of my life in the small town of Maiden, North Carolina, population of about 3,000. I know a thing or two about small towns and the people who live there. And most people from these small towns, at least where I'm from, are dirt poor. Not a whole lot to their names. And they have to work long hours in grueling conditions to make ends meet. And a lot of them feel a sense of pride in that, which they should, credit where it's due. But these people also kind of have their own weird version of the oppression Olympics. You can talk about any sort of struggle you're going through, and immediately some blue-collar motherfucker will come up to you talking about, you think you have it hard? This is what I'm doing. Like, we all joke about 60 hours a week. I remember my first part-time job. It became a running joke for a reason. And, these people are the first ones to call out anyone trying to co-opt that image or that lifestyle for clout. No one gatekeeps poverty quite like poor white people. But I find it interesting that the only ones they don't call out are the ones making millions of dollars off of it. My first real exposure to this phenomenon was stand-up comedian Dan Whitney, who you may know better as Larry the Cable Guy. And if you've seen any of his stuff before, then you know his shtick. He comes out in a sleeveless flannel, has a ball cap on, and essentially plays on rural stereotypes. Thought he was hilarious when I was a kid. These days, not so much. But if that's your thing, whatever. That's fine. And to be fair, Dan Whitney has never once pretended that Larry the Cable Guy is anything other than a character. But it's so weird to me how so many people feel like this man, this character, somehow genuinely represents them when it's literally just a caricature of his core fan base. But this is far from the only example. Remember that show Duck Dynasty? I wish I didn't. Yeah, hate to break the illusion, but the Robertson family aren't a bunch of good old boys. They're a bunch of rich white yuppies who only grew their beards out for the show, which, by the way, was scripted as hell. And if you want to go even worse than that as to what was on TV, you remember Alaskan Bush people? Yeah, it was supposedly about this family of hillbillies that lived out in the wilderness and lived off the land and didn't use any sort of modern conveniences. Except when the camera wasn't rolling, they had all sorts of five-star buffets and air-conditioned trailers and all that bullshit. I didn't see anyone in my town or online calling these people out for pretending to be country. Oh yeah, and let's also not forget that a literal billionaire trust fund baby from New York who's never done a hard day's work in his life somehow managed to scam his way into the presidency by convincing working class people that he was one of them. I know it's not quite the same thing, but it still pisses me off. But at the end of all of it, and I know I said I wasn't going to talk about fucking Jason Aldean anymore, but really, the most egregious offender out of all of this is mainstream country music. But it's not even just about Jason Aldean. It's the likes of Jason Aldean. The Luke Bryans, the Blake Sheltons, the Brantley Gilberts. You know, Bo Burnham put it best. It's a bunch of millionaire metrosexuals singing about the struggles of the common man from the comfort of their private jets. It's all just tasteless textbook pandering with zero thought behind it. And it's the reason I hated country music for the majority of my life. Now, I have come to appreciate the genre a little bit more as I've gotten older. You know, if you dig a little bit below the surface, you can find some great artists who write actual songs. But all these fuckers that you hear on the radio don't know a damn thing about what they're singing about. Jason Aldean specifically, he was born in the town of Macon, Georgia, population of about 100,000. Not exactly a small town. And now he lives in Nashville, population of a little over 700,000. What the fuck does this man know about being in a small town? And if you think that's bad, I'm about to ruin your day even more. You know Aaron Lewis? Yeah, lead singer of early 2000s butt rock band Stained? He's making country music now. He is putting on the cosplay of a redneck despite the fact that he's from fucking Vermont. I've been to Vermont. It is hipster fucking central. You don't get to claim to be country if you're from the same state as Bernie fucking Sanders. You want to know a music artist that actually knows a thing or two about country life? Slipknot. Yeah, they might not run around in cowboy hats and crocodile skin boots, but every single one of those boys was born and raised in bumfuck Iowa. Corey Taylor has more country in his pinky than someone like Jason Aldean or Aaron Lewis have head to toe. If you really want a country artist that truly represents small-town America, you need to look no further than the GOAT himself, Mr. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash regularly spoke out against racism. He even went so far as to write an entire album detailing all the horrible things that happened to indigenous folks in North America. He regularly flipped off the police and played concerts in prisons. Hell, some of his biggest hits were written about drugs and murder. Johnny Cash was about as punk as a country artist ever got. And yeah, he had his faults, and they were numerous, but many of his views would be considered progressive, even by the standards of today. But I guess y'all would probably just blacklist him and call him woke for those. So in the wake of that stupid fucking Jason Aldean song, which I promise I'm done talking about, there is another phenomenon that I've noticed over the course of my life that I want to shed a little bit of light on. Now, yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Hold on. There is a second video that I wanted to show you all that I can't seem to find right now. I'll find it in a bit. Good knowledge, but I do want you to pay attention to this update regarding the Restriction Act 2.0. We touched on it a little bit the other day, where you would have to put in the information from your license in order to access the internet. Here's a bit more information while I find the other video. I don't know how I messed that up. Huh.
UFO hearings yesterday were a distraction. Do you remember the Restrict Act from a few months ago that would have given the president to basically ban any internet service they didn't like? Well, version 2.0 is here, and it's terrifying. It's being called the Kids Online Safety Act, which is really clever marketing, but if you get into the bill, it does some pretty terrifying things. This bill would give the government broad power to remove anything that they deemed harmful to children. And who was already using children as a scapegoat to ban books and people? What else could be deemed inappropriate for children to learn about? Slavery, the Holocaust, women's issues, queer people, trans people? Think of the implications. Oh, and to ever use the internet again, you would have to upload your ID, like you do at a bar. I'm tagging Fight for Our Futures. They have a lot of great information and resources, but please get the word out. We have to fight this. We cannot lose the internet.
I keep telling people this, we must protect the children, is just a catchphrase to get you to agree to vote away your rights. But I did find the second video. And I see how I got it mixed up. I got to start labeling these before I upload them. But here we go.
Oh, but hold on a second. Let's talk about Toby Keith real quick. Pause to read. This is the only story about Toby fucking Keith that I will ever enjoy listening to or hearing. So basically, he, as well as Chris Christopherson, who is another country music legend, were both invited to Willie Nelson's 70th birthday party. At some point, the two came face to face, had a few words, and Toby Keith apparently said something to the effect of, "None of that lefty shit out there, Chris." And former Army Ranger Chris Christopherson took exception to this. His response to Toby Keith was, and I quote, "Have you ever worn your country's uniform? No, you have not. Have you ever taken another man's life and then cashed the check your country gave for you to do so? The answer is no, you have not. So you need to shut the fuck up because you don't have any idea what you're talking about." This exchange also apparently got the attention of several other partygoers, to which he looked at them, pointed at Toby Keith, and said, "You know what Waylon Jennings said about guys like this? He said they're doing to country music what pantyhose did to finger fucking." I fucking love Chris Christopherson, man.
Posing at its finest. Now I know country music is not the only genre that has posers. We know Kid Rock, silver spoon in the mouth born kid that cosplay. We know. But here's the thing. Fans of other genres accept and know that these people are fully playing a caricature. The caricature goes along with the image and the music and everything else, and it's cool. But for some reason, when it comes to country music, they buy the whole thing hook, line, and sinker. Like, do you really think? And here's the dichotomy that really, really boggles my brain. Because when they're fighting to defend their favorite country music star, they tell you how successful and rich they are. And they're like, "Nah, you'll never make as much money as them." And then turn around and go, "But they understand where I'm at." How? While the rest of us are sitting here like, damn, eggs and milk did get expensive. They don't even know how much that shit cost. I guess, and I digress. As always, thank you for joining me here at Conversations with Taz, here for Think About It Thursdays. I will see you all tomorrow for Freeform Friday, and make sure you check out the links in the description of the bio. And if you like the podcast, bring a friend with you next time. As always, each one teach one, each one reach one. Till tomorrow.